You are pathetic and worthless. I honestly can't believe I'm stuck with someone like you." He laughed like a predator as his mistress poured red wine over her, the scarlet liquid soaking her dress and her pride. Every mocking word, every cruel sneer was designed to humiliate her completely, to show everyone just how powerless he thought she was. But she wasn't as powerless as he believed. Calm, composed, and deadly in silence, she held a secret that could bring everything he valued crashing down. In a single deliberate act, she struck back in a way that left him stunned, exposed, and utterly speechless. This is the story of a woman humiliated in public, mocked by a billionaire who rose in silence to wield a power no one expected. And today, it is being retold by me. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The ballroom glittered with gold chandeliers and crystal glasses. Every detail of the Whitmore Charity Gala screamed wealth, elegance, and power. Journalists swarmed the entrance, snapping photos of the elite as they stepped out of black cars. This night wasn't just a social event. It was Damian Whitmore's stage to remind the world who he was, a billionaire with influence stretching across continents. And by his side, as always, stood his wife, Clara Whitmore. Clara wore a midnight blue gown, simple but breathtaking. Her dark curls swept into a graceful updo as she moved with quiet dignity, smiling politely at greetings, shaking hands with politicians and investors. Her smooth, ebony skin glowed under the lights, a striking contrast to the pale faces around her. On the surface, she looked like the picture-perfect billionaire's wife, but inside she felt like porcelain, polished on the outside, fragile within. Damian's hand rested lightly at her back, but it was all for show, his fair skin brushing against her like an afterthought. He leaned in to whisper, his breath cold against her ear. "Remember your role tonight. Smile, nod, and don't embarrass me." Clara's lips curved into a soft smile for the cameras, though her chest tightened at his words. "Yes, Damian," she said calmly. They entered the ballroom to applause. Waiters rushed forward with champagne, and the orchestra played a soft tune. Conversations buzzed, laughter echoed, and diamonds sparkled under the light. But then Clara noticed something else. Eyes flicking past her, whispers curling in the corners of the room. The name on people's lips wasn't hers. It was Sophia Lane. She entered like a flame, fiery red dress clinging to her figure, blonde curls bouncing around her shoulders, her porcelain complexion flushed with excitement. Sophia was half Clara's age, ambitious and bold. She laughed too loudly, smiled too sweetly, and clung to Damian's arm the moment she joined them. "Darling," Damian greeted Sophia with a grin meant to sting. He kissed her hand, ignoring the way Clara stood just inches away, his blue eyes skipping over his wife's dark features. Sophia's eyes sparkled with triumph as she glanced at Clara. "Mr. Whitmore, you didn't tell me your wife would look so elegant tonight." It wasn't a compliment. It was a dagger wrapped in silk. Clara felt every gaze in the room shift toward her, waiting for her reaction, the white elite staring at the black woman in their midst. She simply smiled, steady and calm, though her fingers tightened around her champagne glass. Damian chuckled. "Clara tries her best," he said, "but you know elegance can't compete with youth." The table erupted in polite laughter, though some shifted uncomfortably. Clara's cheeks burned, but she didn't break. She raised her glass instead. "To the Whitmore Foundation," she said evenly. "May it continue to serve those in need." The toast was elegant, smooth, and gracious. It was the kind of thing people expected from her. Still, as she drank, she saw Sophia lean into Damian, whispering something that made him smirk. Dinner was served, and the cruelty sharpened. "Clara," Damian said, cutting into his steak. "Tell us again about that little community project you've been fussing over. What was it called? A literacy program for the inner city?" Clara nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, it's focused on helping underprivileged children gain access to books and proper tutoring." Damian waved his fork dismissively. "Admirable, but hardly relevant to billion-dollar negotiations. You see, my wife still thinks small. Sweet, isn't it?" The guests chuckled awkwardly, their fair faces turning toward her with pity. Clara forced a smile, though her chest ached. She knew exactly what Damian was doing, stripping her of dignity in front of people who mattered. Sophia leaned forward, lips curling. "I'm sure Mrs. Whitmore means well, but not everyone is cut out for real business, are they?" Damian laughed. "Exactly. That's why I keep her around, to remind me of simpler things." The humiliation was sharp, but Clara swallowed it down. She refused to give them the reaction they wanted. Then it happened. Sophia lifted her wine glass, her eyes locked on Clara's. With a slow, deliberate movement, she tilted the glass forward. The red liquid spilled down Clara's dress, splattering across the midnight blue fabric like blood on silk, staining her dark skin beneath. Gasps filled the room. "Oh no," Sophia said, covering her mouth with fake horror. "I'm so clumsy?" But her eyes glittered with satisfaction. Damian threw his head back and laughed. "Pathetic! Worthless! I honestly can't believe I'm stuck with someone like you." The words sliced deeper than the wine that clung cold against Clara's skin. Laughter rippled across the table, cruel and sharp. Clara stood frozen, drenched, humiliated. Every eye was on her. The room waited for her to crumble, to lash out, to scream. But she didn't. Instead, Clara drew in a slow breath. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted. She set down her glass and dabbed at her dress with the napkin, calm, composed. Her silence unnerved them. Damian frowned slightly, expecting tears or rage. Instead, Clara's eyes, calm, unreadable, met his. And for the first time that night, Damian hesitated because behind her quiet composure, there was something he couldn't see, something he couldn't control. Clara's mind whispered one truth. "You think I'm powerless, but you have no idea." The wine dripped down Clara's dress in dark streaks, soaking the fabric and staining her skin. The sting of humiliation burned hotter than the alcohol itself, but she refused to flinch. Damian leaned back in his chair, laughter spilling from his mouth, cruel and unrestrained, his ruddy cheeks flushed with glee. He clapped his hands once as if amused by a well-delivered joke. "Look at you," he sneered, gesturing toward her ruined gown. The great Clara Whitmore, reduced to a soaked rag doll. "Tell me, what good is a wife who can't even command respect at her own gala?" Sophia giggled beside him, twirling her glass, her fair hands steady. "Maybe she's more suited to pouring drinks than hosting them," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with mockery. The table erupted into laughter again, some forced, some gleeful. Clara felt the eyes on her. Guests who once praised her grace now whispered behind hands, delighted by her humiliation. The white crowd reveling in the black woman's fall. Damian leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough for the nearby guests to hear. You know, Clara, I almost feel sorry for you. Almost. But you've had years to make yourself useful. And yet here you stand, weak, dull, a shadow clinging to my name. His words stabbed at her pride, each one deliberate, calculated. Clara's fingers tightened around her napkin, but she kept her face serene. If you're finished, Damian, I'll excuse myself to change. He smirked, eyes cold. Finished? Oh, my dear, I'm just getting started. He gestured for the waiter to bring another bottle of wine. As it was uncorked, he raised his glass high. A toast, he declared, his tone mocking. To strong men who build empires and the women who stand behind them, pretending to matter. Every guest raised a glass, though some shifted uneasily. Clara's stomach knotted. She felt stripped bare, exposed under the weight of their stares. Sophia leaned across the table, lips curled in a smile. You must be proud, Mrs. Whitmore. Not every woman gets to watch her husband shine while she fades quietly into the background. Damian chuckled and placed his hand over Sophia's, ignoring Clara completely. Indeed, Clara should be grateful. Not every wife is allowed to sit at a table where real business is discussed. Clara drew a slow, steady breath. Real business? She asked, her tone calm, though her heart hammered. Damian smirked. Yes, the kind that earns $8.4 billion. The kind of deal people like you could never comprehend. He sipped his wine, savoring the moment. But don't worry, you'll benefit from it. I'll let you keep your jewelry, your dresses, your little charities. You'll always have a place, decorating my arm until I find something fresher. The room fell quiet. His cruelty had cut too deep, too openly. Even those who enjoyed gossip felt the tension. Clara looked at him, her face serene, though inside her blood boiled. She wanted to scream, to slap him, to make him bleed with words as sharp as his. But she didn't. Instead, she lifted her chin and dabbed at her stained dress again, her voice steady as she spoke. Enjoy your toast, Damian. Empires built on arrogance often fall faster than they rise. The words hung in the air, subtle yet pointed. Guests glanced at one another nervously, unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. Damian's smile faltered for a second. Then, with a mocking laugh, he waved her off like a child. Go on, Clara. Run along and fix yourself. Leave the important matters to those of us who actually matter. Sophia smirked, triumphant. Damian returned to his wine, already dismissing her from his world. Clara turned gracefully, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor as she walked away. But she didn't crumble. Her back remained straight, her movements calm, her silence louder than any outburst could have been. Behind her, Damian's voice carried one final blow. Pathetic woman, he muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear. I should have replaced her years ago. Laughter followed, sharp and cruel. Clara kept walking, the sound echoing in her ears. Every step felt heavy, but with each one, her resolve grew stronger. They thought she was powerless. They thought she was broken. But deep inside, beneath the humiliation, beneath the pain, she held something Damian couldn't see, something he could never imagine. She held the key to his empire, the very $8.4 billion contract he bragged about, the crown jewel of his career, was hers to unravel. And while Damian mocked, laughed, and flaunted his mistress, Clara's silence was not weakness. It was strategy. The illusion of her powerlessness would be the very weapon that destroyed him. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, And how did this story speak to you? The headlines hit Clara like stones. Damian Whitmore appears with stunning Sophia Lane at New York gala. Wife absent. Is Clara Whitmore fading from high society? Billionaire mogul spotted vacationing in Capri with mysterious blonde. Every magazine cover, every gossip column carried the same images. Damian with Sophia on his arm, smiling as if he had already erased Clara from his life, his white arm linked possessively with hers. Clara sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through her phone. Her untouched coffee had gone cold. The Whitmore mansion was silent, but the silence was heavy, suffocating. She set the phone down and pressed her palms together. So, this is how he wants to play it. Public humiliation wasn't enough. He wants the world to see me as nothing, a shadow in his empire. The door opened. Damian walked in, dressed in a tailored suit, his tie already knotted perfectly. He looked like success itself, confident and invincible, his pale features set in smug assurance. Sophia followed a step behind him, still in one of her glittering gowns from the night before. Clara's stomach tightened. In her own home, Sophia moved freely like a queen in waiting. Damian didn't even glance at Clara. He poured himself a glass of orange juice, sipped it, then leaned against the counter. "Board meeting today," he said casually, speaking to Sophia. "We'll finalize the preparations for the international contract." Sophia smiled at Clara. Damian chuckled, finally looking at his wife. His eyes were sharp, cruel. Clara has no place there. She's more comfortable hosting tea parties with her charity friends. Clara's lips tightened. The Whitmore Foundation is not a tea party. It's real work, Damian. Work you've ignored. Damian's smile hardened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Don't embarrass yourself, Clara. No one cares about your little projects. They care about $8.4 billion, and I am the man who will deliver it." Sophia's laughter chimed in like bells. "He's right, Mrs. Whitmore. You should focus on things you understand." Clara said nothing. Her silence made Damian sneer. He liked it better when she fought back. This quiet composure unsettled him, though he'd never admit it. "Stay out of my way," Damian said finally, brushing past her as if she were invisible. Sophia followed, tossing Clara a mocking smile before disappearing with him. The door closed. Clara was alone again. By afternoon, the calls started. Friends who once begged to attend her charity events now declined her invitations politely, their voices stiff. Her cousin Rebecca, who had always stood by her, suddenly became distant. "Clara," Rebecca said over the phone, her tone sharp, "you need to face reality. Damian is moving on. The whole city can see it. Don't make yourself look pitiful by clinging to him." Clara's heart ached. "Rebecca, you know what he's doing to me." "How can you? I can't risk my reputation getting dragged into this mess." Rebecca cut her off. "You need to accept it. Damian is the future. You're just his past." The line went dead. Clara set the phone down slowly, her hands trembling. "Even my own blood has turned against me." That night she stood by the window of her bedroom, staring at the city lights. In the distance, Damian's name flashed on billboards, his face plastered across magazines. He was untouchable, untouchably cruel. Her door opened. Damian walked in, tossing his jacket on a chair. Sophia wasn't with him this time. His expression was sharp, calculating. "We need to talk," he said, loosening his tie. Clara turned to face him. "About what?" he smirked. "About us. Or rather, about the end of us." Her breath caught. "The end?" "Yes." He walked closer, his voice calm but merciless. "After the contract is signed, I'll be filing for divorce. I'll give you a generous settlement. You'll live comfortably, far away from me, while Sophia takes her rightful place at my side." Clara's chest tightened, but she refused to look away. "Rightful place," she repeated softly. Damian's smile was razor-sharp. "Yes, she's everything you're not. Beautiful, ambitious, alive. You've become nothing but an ornament. And frankly, Clara, I don't keep broken ornaments." The cruelty in his words was sharper than any slap. "Why wait until after the contract?" she asked quietly. "Because I can't afford distractions," he said simply. "The partners expect stability. Once the deal is done, you're gone. It's that simple." He turned toward the door, pausing only to deliver one final blow. "Be grateful. Without me, you're nothing. You'd be a nobody, clinging to your dead father's name. Remember that." The door slammed shut behind him. Clara stood frozen, her heart aching, her body trembling, but slowly, her eyes hardened. "Without him, I'm nothing." She walked to her desk, pulling open the drawer where she kept her father's old documents. Her hands brushed over the familiar signature, the papers he'd once shown her as a child. And then she saw it, Damian's signature beside hers. But something was wrong. The curves, the slant. It wasn't her handwriting. Her breath quickened. She flipped through more papers. Again and again her name appeared, but not in her hand. Damian had forged her signature. The truth struck her like lightning. His empire, his power, his contracts, all of it stood on a foundation of lies. And those lies pointed directly to her. Clara sat back in her chair, the weight of the discovery pressing against her chest. For the first time in weeks, she felt something stronger than despair. Power. If Damian thought she was powerless, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Clara didn't sleep that night. The forged signatures swam before her eyes, each one proof of Damian's deception. She sat at her desk until dawn, tracing every line, every curve of ink, her anger sharpening into clarity. Her father's company, his legacy, wasn't Damian's to use. Those contracts, those foreign partnerships, all leaned on her name. Damian had stolen her authority and gambled it for billions. At breakfast the next morning, Damian spoke on the phone, pacing the dining room like a general commanding troops. Yes, the board is aligned," he said smoothly. "We'll announce the deal within the month. $8.4 billion secured. The world will know Damian Whitmore doesn't lose." Sophia sat nearby, smiling proudly as though she had earned the victory herself, her blonde hair catching the morning light. Clara entered quietly, a file tucked under her arm. Neither Damian nor Sophia bothered to greet her. Clara sat, poured herself tea, and listened. Damian turned, catching her eye briefly. "You wouldn't understand, Clara," he said with a smirk, slipping his phone into his pocket. "This is high-level business, not the kind you play with in your little charities." Clara stirred her tea slowly. "You're right," she said softly. "I don't understand how fraud counts as business." Damian froze for a fraction of a second. Sophia looked up, blinking. Clara met his gaze calmly. "Strange thing, though. I was going through Father's files last night. I found my name all over your contracts." She paused, letting her words settle. "Funny, isn't it? I don't remember signing them." The silence was heavy. Damian laughed suddenly too loudly. "Don't be ridiculous, you must have forgotten." Clara's lips curved faintly. "Perhaps, but handwriting experts rarely forget." His eyes narrowed sharp with warning. "You're playing a dangerous game, Clara." Sophia shifted nervously, sensing something crack in Damian's armor. Clara lifted her cup and sipped her tea with perfect composure. "No, Damian," she said softly. "You are." That afternoon, Clara met with her father's old lawyer, Mr. Grant. The man was gray-haired now, but sharp as ever, his white hair stark against his weathered face. She laid the forged documents before him. He adjusted his glasses, scanning each page carefully. "This isn't your handwriting," he said firmly, "and if what you're telling me is true, Damian Whitmore has built his entire empire on stolen authority." Clara nodded, her voice low. "If I go public, his contracts collapse." Grant leaned back, studying her. "That kind of move would destroy him completely. Are you ready for that?" Clara thought of Damian's laughter, Sophia's smirk, the humiliation at the gala, the whispers of her so-called friends. Her chest burned with the memory. "Yes," she said finally. "I'm ready." Later that night, Damian returned home triumphant, bragging about meetings, promising Sophia the world. Clara listened quietly, her eyes unreadable. Inside, though, her silence was no longer the silence of a broken woman. It was the silence of a storm waiting to break. And Damian Whitmore had no idea how close his empire was to crumbling. The mansion was still, but Clara's mind was anything but. Every night she lay awake, listening to Damian's laughter echo from his study, where he entertained Sophia and their chosen guests. The humiliation never stopped. It had become part of her daily life. Yet, instead of breaking her, it steeled her resolve. On the surface, Clara played the part Damian had written for her, the quiet, submissive wife. She smiled when she was supposed to, nodded politely, and faded into the background when Sophia was near. Damian grew bolder with each passing day, mistaking her silence for surrender. But in the shadows, Clara moved differently. She wasn't surrendering. She was preparing. The first ally she sought was Mr. Grant, her father's old lawyer. They met in his dimly lit office, where shelves of dusty law books towered over them. Clara placed another folder of documents on his desk. "I've confirmed it," she said softly. "Every major deal Damian has signed in the past 3 years has my forged signature on it. Without me, the contracts are worthless." Mr. Grant adjusted his glasses, his face tightening. "He's been reckless. If this comes to light, his empire won't just take a hit. It will collapse." "But Clara," he hesitated, "are you ready for the storm that follows?" Clara leaned back, her eyes calm. "He humiliated me in front of the world. He flaunts his mistress in my home. He tells me I'm nothing. Let him taste what nothing feels like." The lawyer studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we'll begin." Her second ally was Ethan Clark, her childhood friend. Ethan had grown into a quiet but loyal man, working as an analyst in one of Damian's subsidiary firms, his freckled face earnest over video calls. She called him late one evening, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "Ethan, I need your help. Damian is hiding fraudulent dealings inside his contracts. I have the evidence, but I need someone on the inside to help me trace the money." There was a pause on the line. Then Ethan's voice, firm and unwavering. "Tell me what to do." Together they worked in silence, trading late-night calls and encrypted files. Ethan uncovered a web of shell companies and shady overseas accounts Damian had tied to the deal. The fraud was deeper than Clara imagined, and with every discovery, her case grew stronger. Finally, Clara reached out to those Damian had stepped on during his rise. A secretary he had screamed at, a manager he had humiliated, a loyal employee he had discarded. All of them, bitter and wounded, had stories to tell, their pale faces lighting up with vindication. Clara listened, gathered documents, pieced together a pattern. For the first time, she felt something shift. She wasn't alone anymore. Meanwhile, Damian's arrogance only grew. At breakfast one morning, he leaned across the table toward Sophia, who was now seated openly in Clara's place. Clara sipped her tea in silence as Damian's voice carried. "Soon, my darling, all this will be yours. The title, the crown, the world at our feet. Clara has no fight left in her. She's just background noise. Sophia smiled, glancing at Clara with triumph. I can't wait to take her place. Imagine the headlines. Sophia Whitmore. It has a nice ring, doesn't it? Damian laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Yes, she'll be forgotten. A footnote in my story. Clara kept her face calm, her eyes lowered. Inside, her anger burned like fire. He believes I'm background noise. He believes I'll disappear. Let him believe it. It will make the fall sweeter. The night of the private party arrived. The ballroom gleamed once more, filled with investors, politicians, and celebrities. Damian thrived in the spotlight, Sophia glittering beside him like a jewel, her white skin radiant in the glow. Clara followed a step behind, her gown pale and understated, her presence almost invisible, her dark complexion blending into the shadows Damian cast. Damian made sure of it. My wife, he announced loudly, drawing chuckles from the crowd, prefers the quiet life. She doesn't understand the intricacies of billion-dollar negotiations, but that's all right. She makes an excellent decoration. Laughter rippled through the guests. Clara's cheeks heated, but she remained composed, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Sophia leaned in, her voice just loud enough for Clara to hear. You really should thank him, Mrs. Whitmore. If not for Damian, you'd be no one. A lonely widow's daughter clinging to scraps of memory. The words cut deep, but Clara did not flinch. She met Sophia's gaze, calm and unblinking. Be careful, Miss Lane, she said softly. Sometimes crowns are heavier than they appear. Sophia frowned, unsettled. For the first time, she saw something in Clara's eyes that made her uneasy. Damian noticed the exchange and laughed. Don't mind her, he told Sophia loudly. Clara's learned that silence is her only strength. She's harmless. The guests laughed again. Clara smiled faintly, her expression unreadable, but inside the storm was building. As the night wore on, Clara excused herself from the glittering crowd and stepped into a quiet hallway. From her purse, she pulled out the envelope she had carried for weeks, the legal notice prepared by Mr. Grant, backed by evidence Ethan had gathered. Her hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. Damian was hours away from signing the contract that would crown his career. Investors had flown in. The board was aligned. The media was ready. He believed nothing could touch him. Clara smiled faintly, sliding the envelope back into her purse. He has no idea what's coming. The next morning, Damian strode into his boardroom, radiating triumph. The room buzzed with energy. Partners from across the globe sat around the table, waiting for the final signatures, their white-collar uniformity unbroken. Sophia hovered proudly at his side, already wearing the smug smile of a queen. Clara entered quietly, unnoticed at first. She took a seat at the far end of the table, her gown simple, her face calm. Damian glanced at her and smirked. You don't belong here, Clara. This is history in the making, not charity gossip. Clara said nothing. She simply set her purse on the table and folded her hands. The documents were laid out. Damian lifted his pen, savoring the moment. Gentlemen, today we make history. $8.4 billion secured. But before the pen touched paper, Clara's voice broke the silence. Not today, Damian. The room stilled. All eyes turned to her. Damian froze, his smirk faltering. Clara opened her purse and slid a single envelope across the table toward the nearest investor. Before you sign, I suggest you read this. The man frowned, opening the envelope. His face paled as he scanned the pages. He passed it to the next partner, then the next. Murmurs spread around the table like wildfire. What is this? One of them demanded. Clara's voice was steady. calm. Evidence that Damian Whitmore forged my signature on every major contract for the past 3 years. Without my consent, those deals are void, and any attempt to finalize this deal today will trigger legal action that freezes the contract immediately. Gasps filled the room. Papers shuffled. Investors whispered furiously. Damian shot to his feet, face red with fury. "This is nonsense. She's lying." Clara met his rage with calm eyes. "Am I? Because every signature can be examined by experts. Every forgery can be proven in court. Shall we test it?" Silence fell. The weight of her words pressed into every corner of the room. An investor slammed the folder shut. "We can't move forward with this uncertainty. The deal is frozen until this matter is resolved." Sophia's face drained of color. Damian's chest heaved, his fists clenched. He looked at Clara with pure hatred. "You!" he hissed. "You did this." Clara rose slowly, her voice quiet but cutting. "No, Damian, you did this. I'm just the one who finally stopped you." She gathered her purse and walked toward the door, her steps calm, her head held high. Behind her, the boardroom erupted in chaos, investors shouting, papers scattering, Damian roaring in fury. But Clara didn't look back. For the first time in years, she felt free. The silent war was over. The next battle, the fall of Damian Whitmore, was about to begin. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, newspapers splashed the headlines across every front page. Whitmore deal frozen amid forgery allegations. $8.4 billion contract in jeopardy. Board demands answers. Clara Whitmore emerges at center of billionaire scandal. In the boardroom, Damian raged like a caged animal, his fists slammed against the polished table. His voice thundered through the glass walls. "This is sabotage!" he shouted. "Lies! Clara is bitter! She wants to ruin me because she knows I'm leaving her." But the investors weren't listening. They whispered among themselves, passing papers, trading uneasy looks. One finally spoke up, his voice sharp. "We cannot proceed with this contract, Mr. Whitmore. Until the authenticity of these documents is confirmed, our money is at risk. This deal is dead, for now." Damian's face turned red. "You're making a mistake. Do you know who I am?" The man's eyes narrowed. "A man under investigation for fraud. That's who." The word struck harder than any blow. Damian's mouth opened, then shut again, his confidence faltering. And then came the final knife. Sophia. At first, she sat quietly, pale and trembling, as the empire she had hitched herself to collapsed before her eyes. But when she realized Damian was sinking, her survival instincts sharpened. "You think this is just about signatures?" she said suddenly, her voice loud enough for the whole room. "Ask him about the offshore accounts. Ask him about the payments he funneled through fake charities. I've seen the files. He thought he could hide them, but I know everything." Damian spun toward her, stunned. You traitor!" Sophia rose, her expression cold. "You promised me a crown, Damian, but you've given me nothing but lies. I won't go down with you." The room exploded in murmurs. Investors scribbled notes, some dialing phones, others demanding copies of Sophia's claims. Damian lunged toward her, but security stepped in. "Get out!" he roared. "You'll regret this, Sophia." But Sophia only smirked, the same smirk she once gave Clara, and walked out with her head high. Damian turned back to the room, desperate now. "Gentlemen, listen." But no one listened. The meeting was over. His empire was collapsing piece by piece before his eyes. Clara sat at the far end of the table, silent through the chaos. She hadn't needed to raise her voice. Her documents had done the work. Now she watched as the man who had mocked her, belittled her, humiliated her in front of the world stood broken. Damian's eyes finally found hers. Rage, disbelief, and desperation swirled in his gaze. "You did this," he spat. "You ruined me. For what? To prove you're more than a shadow." Clara rose slowly, her movements calm and deliberate. She walked toward him, her heels clicking against the floor, her posture flawless. When she stood before him, she met his glare with eyes colder than steel. "No, Damian," she said softly, but every word carried. "You ruined yourself with your arrogance, with your cruelty. You thought I was powerless. You thought I was nothing. But you forgot something. This empire was built on my father's name, my signature, my legacy. You never owned it. You only borrowed it." His face crumbled. He looked smaller now, stripped of the armor of wealth and power. "Clara, please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Don't do this. I'll fix it. We can fix us. I'll make it right." The plea might have swayed another woman, but not Clara. Not after the years of humiliation, the betrayal, the public degradation. She leaned closer, her voice cold enough to freeze him in place. "Pathetic. Worthless. Do you remember those words, Damian? You threw them at me in front of everyone. Tonight, I give them back to you. Pathetic, worthless, that's who you are." Damian flinched as though slapped. Clara turned away without another glance. The war was over and she had won. By evening, the news spread like wildfire. Investors withdrew millions. Partners severed ties. Damian Whitmore's name, once a symbol of power, was dragged through mud. Reporters swarmed outside the Whitmore mansion, shouting questions about fraud, betrayal, and Sophia's accusations. Images of Damian's red, furious face filled the airwaves. Clara, by contrast, appeared calm in every photo, her dignity intact. The humiliation he had inflicted on her for years was now his own. At a private dinner days later, Clara returned to the same social circles that once mocked her. This time the whispers were different. "That's Mrs. Whitmore. She exposed him. She's sharper than anyone knew. Grace under fire, remarkable woman." The same elites who laughed at her humiliation now bowed their heads, eager to curry her favor. Clara smiled politely, but inside she felt no need for their approval. Her strength had never come from them, it had always been her own. Sophia vanished from Damian's side as quickly as she had appeared. Rumors swirled that she had traded files with investigators to save herself. Others claimed she fled overseas. Either way, she was gone. Damian, meanwhile, was left hollow. The board stripped him of authority. His accounts were frozen and lawsuits mounted. He called Clara repeatedly, but she never answered. She had no words left for him. One morning he stood outside the mansion gates, surrounded by reporters begging for entry. His voice cracked as he called her name. "Clara, please! You can't let them take everything. Please, I need you. You're my wife." From an upstairs window, Clara watched silently. He looked smaller now, pitiful, his once proud posture broken. She remembered every cruel word he had spoken, every time he mocked her, every moment he tried to erase her, and she closed the curtain. The final board meeting came 2 weeks later. This time, Clara sat at the head of the table. Her father's legacy was hers again, legally restored by the very documents Damian had forged. Investors, once doubtful, now leaned forward eagerly as she spoke of rebuilding trust, of steering the company with integrity. She wore no crown, no jewels, only a simple suit, and the quiet confidence of a woman who had survived fire and come out steel. When the meeting ended, applause filled the room. Clara rose, nodded politely, and walked out with calm dignity. As she stepped into the hallway, she caught her reflection in a tall mirror. For the first time in years, she didn't see the shadow Damian had painted her as. She saw herself, Clara Whitmore, strong, unbroken, and free.